promised a second episode, Steve, this week. We're delivering on that. Okay, we're delivering on our
See,
promises.
I was going to say, you don't get a lot of that around some places.
Mhm. Mhm. Uh, this is cool. It's a cool episode. It's an episode from a podcast called Stuff Summer Says with
Steve,
Steve, and it's an interview with Darren Rovell. And I think if you've listened to our podcast, you know that we've. I don't think our podcast probably happens without Tim because we've all like sports business in
yeah,
this day and age, and the
right,
way
that's
we
fair.
talk about it probably stems all the way back to him. So very cool interview, spending some time with him, talking about that journey for him as well as uh, his new endeavor around collectibles, which I think was incredibly fascinating to learn more about. So yeah, take a listen to that, and we'll be back after this. Steve, we've had a lot of guests over the years, and you booked this guest because of who Penn State is playing this week. But then I don't think we've ever had a guest that's reached out to us and said, I got something I want to talk about this week. And that was what I woke up to in an email the other day from our
That's
guest
true.
today.
I am excited about that. I
Yeah.
was excited about this almost as much as John T. Edge, and then I got the email, and then I'm like, okay, this is going to be even
Yeah.
better. So
Yeah. He's fired up. Our guest today is Mr. Darren Rovell. And I think we'll open up the floor there. I want to get to sports business, and I want to get to collect, and I want to get to collecting things and some thoughts there. But it seems like you might have a James Franklin take that you've been itching and dying to share.
I'm trying not to have any bulletin board material. I mean, I know you guys would get it out to the team, but I don't know. I mean, having watched UCLA play Northwestern and that first half, I could, the saying, I could run through the holes that our offensive line created. Oh my God, I was shocked by what happened on Saturday. That was pretty crazy.
It was
you were not alone.
yeah, you're not alone in that fact.
I mean, I understand, the QB's not bad, but the team is just, they were as 0-4 as you can be. Uh, you know, don't even start with, oh, it was on the road with me. So we'll see. We always, Northwestern and Penn State for the most part, except for maybe a game in the snow in 97. Or I'm thinking about the game where I was at a Billy Joel concert and damn, I can't remember the Penn State QB. Oh, it was horrible. Great comeback against Northwestern.
Probably '05.
What'd you say?
Probably '05.
Yeah, '05. Who was the quarterback?
That would have been Michael Robinson.
Robinson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not who I was thinking. I was thinking Zach someone.
Oh,
Oh,
Zach
could be Zach
Mills.
Mills.
Okay. Yeah.
Zach Mills. That's who I was thinking. We've kind of played close. I was there in the rain a couple years ago when it was close. So hoping we can, turn around our season as well. Because I went to the Tulane Northwestern game at Tulane, and that was not good.
I guess that's a good foray into where I want to go. You've been a sports business reporter, a guy that's been around sports business pretty much all of your life. Can you still enjoy a game as a fan?
I can as a fan. I can't just watching the game. So if I'm a fan, a Northwestern game, I can. A game tonight or whatever, I always think about, what are the odds or, what's going on or so I'm almost like a player, right? Like a lot of players can't enjoy games as fans. I can't enjoy just like regular games, I would say, because I'm always looking for something. There's a great story about when Lucas Oil Stadium opened. They gave Archie Manning the first choice of suite, and he picked the worst suite, which was the end zone suite because he had to look at the field, like he was a quarterback. And so I do think players as fans are tortured, and I am probably tortured in the same way.
Was that
And also tortured in that my fandom is Nets, Mets, Jets, Northwestern, and the Devils, but the Devils are only after 2012. So I've had one championship in my lifetime with very little hope for the future.
I was gonna ask. I knew that you were a Jets fan, and I knew you were a Northwestern fan, obviously. Um, so I wanted to make sure that that was.
By the way, if the Nets won with Durant and Kyrie, I wouldn't have accepted that. It was like,
Sure.
so that's just like another thing there that thank God they didn't win.
All of those years ago, though, you had to have been a sports fan to get into sports
Yeah.
business reporting. When did you realize that there was a hole in the marketplace for covering and talking about this side of sports?
So, one of the things that I didn't want to do is I didn't want to toil in the small markets and I didn't want to do what everyone was doing. And there was a point and Steve will get this, but you will not. Uh, there was a point in like 1992, my freshman year in high school, where I started reading the green pages as much as the red pages. And Steve will understand that as, USA Today, the B section was business and the C section was sports, and it was green and red. And I kind of got interested at that point. That was also the point where Sports Center started reporting salaries when they talked about uh, people getting signed. 1990 was around 1990, 91 when Jose Canseco was a free agent. And around that time, there was really a jump. And all of a sudden, they thought that fans should know salaries. And then fans all of a sudden acted like it was their own money. And, the team was a public trust. And then uh I kind of like looked at the business. I in 95, my junior year of high school, I was aware that there was a sports business daily, which was, the aggregation of anything that was business, almost as like a wire service to executives. And then by 1998, my sophomore year in college, there was Sports Business Journal. There was a book that was written that was called The Mulligan's Guide to Sports Business Careers, and there was one chapter in it that said, if you're a sports business reporter, you could pretty much pick your choice on what to write about, and it would make nationwide news. And I was like, oh my God, my gig is up before I even started. I'm hoping no one reads this book. I don't think a lot of people did, luckily. And so my junior year, I started a sports business radio show, and quickly figured out that the athletes, they don't want to talk to you, but the business people would forever. And that's kind of how it started. Just I was a fan, and I just figured I wanted to be a journalist, but I wanted to be a journalist that would talk about something that was just interesting enough that a lot of people would want to listen to it, but no one was covering. And that's how I got into it.
What was the response to it initially in terms of gaining acceptance? I mean, you said that you're right. It was kind of a low bar of entry, but you raised it by being one of the first, and then more people adopted. So how have you seen it change, and what was the challenges early on?
Yeah, so like in 1996, 97, when I started thinking about it, the only people who were covering the business of sports was what we called the concrete beat. They were city reporters who moved over to the sports section because a new stadium was being built. And they covered City Hall and everything that was happening there. And there were some people there. There was Dick Alm with the Dallas Morning News, and there was Angelo Bruscus. I'll never forget these guys' names at the Seattle Post Intelligencer, Richard Sandomir at the New York Times. But, for me, first it was getting the job and going to ESPN when they came to Northwestern's campus and saying, I don't want to be the intern that you're hiring. I do want to be the sports business reporter that you haven't even thought about hiring. And luckily it was David Albright, who is a senior executive and not an HR person. Had it been an HR person, I probably would never have gotten the job, or maybe would have taken me another 5 years. I just basically asked him the question. I said, how is it acceptable for, you to have stories with dollar signs in it, but it's written by AP or Reuters? And you would never have a baseball story written by AP or Reuters. So why wouldn't you want to be the worldwide leader in sports business? And got to the next level, and somehow, 2 weeks later, after Max Kellerman, I was the second person, youngest person to make it to ESPN that was actually doing some on-air stuff. And but it was a challenge in the beginning. So I used to, I would write stories as if they were fan stories and they happened to be business, right? I couldn't write it as a Bloomberg reporter or a business reporter. I had to write it like a sports reporter. And then all of us, there was a lot of fighting after I wrote stories to try to get my stuff on the front page. I remember my first stint at ESPN between 2000 and 2006. Literally, I'd be lobbying and saying, "Hey, this should be on the front page because this is fans voting with their wallets. This is people buying jerseys. Like this is bigger than a popularity contest. Has to do with money." And I remember doing that, and they're like, "Oh, well, Bill Simmons wrote a." And I'm like, "Yeah, Bill Simmons is on the front page every day. Like a cat could. You have cats, more cats stepping on digital mouses and causing more hits for Bill than I can ever hope to get." So there was a fight, and this was before there were heat maps and other things that, now you could say, "Oh, people are reading this." So sometimes I get it on the front page, and then it would go down and down and down, and I try to fight again. So I remember marketing myself a lot, and I think just over time, it got a lot easier. I was at ESPN from 2000 to 2006. When I returned in 2012, it was a totally different story.
How
Um,
so?
I didn't have to fight for anything. I mean, they paid me 6 times of what I left at, but
Really?
which might have had some sort of impact. But it was very easy to understand, that sports business was very important. So, but that was from the beginning to when that first happened to when I showed up again, that was 12 years. So, watching it over, you know, a quarter century, to understand that now I feel like by 2012, uh, there was a understanding that if fans didn't know about some of the basics of sports business, they weren't a good fan. And that was a long way away from 2000, where it was kind of like, why are we taking away from the joy of sports by, inserting business into it?
What was
Well, yeah, and
the singular moment for you that it clicked that this was could be something that could be taken seriously?
Um, I think early on it was LeBron.
Mm.
When Outside the Lines and Bob Lee went live at 12:01 in the morning, when I was able to break that LeBron had signed with Nike. That was the time we broke it and we went live, and I was like, "Holy hell, this is crazy." Um, and then over time, there were little things that you wouldn't think. Saw the other day that Kobe Bryant's first number 24 jersey sold for $889,000, and I remember breaking the story that Kobe was going to change numbers from 8 to 24. And I would have never thought that would, but that was a story, right, by 2006 or whatever it was. So, just, it was over time, there was nothing sudden, but, like, laying LeBron was a big moment, for ESPN, the magazine, covering the Nike shoe. Jordan and the brand, no one really had covered that while it was happening. And so LeBron was definitely a big thing. And then whether they made it or not, you covered Stephen Marbury and of course Sebastian Telfair and all the guys who were supposed to be the next and weren't. So yeah, so I think LeBron was a big part of it. And then, more stadiums over time and more and richer owners, and the value of sports teams got to be more and more. And I think at the end of the day, it became unavoidable.
by 2012, I mean, and a little later, it probably became more crowded, more people doing it. How did you had to market early to sell yourself and sell the ideas? How did you differentiate then as it got more crowded field or compete? What was that like?
Yeah, ESPN tried to, after I left, ESPN tried to replace me twice. And I just nothing really changed because even if I didn't have competition, I've always kind of acted like someone was going to steal my job the next day. So I was able to keep the Rolodex and the philosophy of calling people when there wasn't stories, and I was always able to win. I think also with creativity. I also, when you think about sports business is always the second story. So how did you find the first story that then would affect the second story? And I was always kind of ahead of people, whether it was originally it was blog lines. Remember that? Remember sports pages, Steve?
Yep.
And then Twitter, people are like, wow, I mean, I was one of the first 5 journalists on Twitter, and it actually wasn't to disseminate my information. It was because I was just trying to win the rat race of knowing what the first story was so that I could then report the sports business side of the story. And it just helped me get there faster. And then ultimately it became a dissemination tool, and also became a circumstance of what happened to me in my career. I left ESPN and went to CNBC. There are people who were wondering where was I? And so Twitter became this perfect timing tool for me to be relevant with people who potentially had left my life. So that was kind of lucky. And then I think through Twitter, you know, I doubt there's many business reporters who had 2 million followers, and then just continuing to, insert myself into moments to make sure that I held that lead and held that relevance. And I think lastly, it's just having a hard head, being authentic to myself, and saying what I wanted. I think people are so scared of being safe. Yeah, of everyone's safe, and you know, I fear safe. I fear being just the prompter reader, because relevance is really established by people who either love you or hate you, but they're passionate about loving or hating you.
What do you mean? You've never pissed anyone off.
Oh, I piss some people off. Yep. Yeah.
I guess for you, then you've had an entrepreneurial spirit to you, and I think kind of part of that aligns with the sports business. And I want to get to Cllct because I think that's an important part of this. But I want to first ask you, when we think about sports business, where is the line between sports business and sports fandom, and how sports business impacts sports fandom? Because I'm thinking about things you would post of jerseys, and sometimes like a Kobe's changing his jersey number is a fandom
Both.
thing, but also a
Right.
business thing.
Business. Yeah, I mean, they're very intertwined. I mean, I think in the beginning, people thought they were far apart, but now they mix all the time. I mean, again, if you don't know your owner's capacity to spend, if you don't know about salary cap, if you don't know about, remember, I think people were challenged to find out about business in 2004 when the NHL shut down for a year. I and if there's work stoppages, the NBA work stoppage that happened, that was an interesting one, at least the one that was in '99, that was before me. But then the other one where Latrell Sprewell had to feed his family, all those covering those, that was like when the NFL was going through CBA, back and forth. I was on Sports Center covering it, and because people had to know what was going on. So I think it is very, very intertwined. Maybe now inextricable in terms of how close they are.
How do people that are consuming it know, or where do they go to get trustworthy information this way? Like we started with Coach Franklin, right? Part of the story this week has been, oh, he's got a buyout. What's going to happen with that? And you've got, it feels like certain people just, oh, well, this is the sports business aspect. This is how much the buyout is. That's the tip of the iceberg, right? So if people are trying to consume it and get information, how do they know they're getting sports business information that matters or that is helpful?
It's a lot of piecemeal now, right? I mean, the what so and let me go back with what Darian kind of had intimated about, how close they are. And when you think about it, people are thinking, okay, what's the psyche of the Nittany Lions this week? and the people around them. And 10 years ago, I would say, oh, they're just mad now. They're going to kick the crap out of Northwestern. They're mad. But now think about the fact that you have NIL concerns. Let's take out the Coach Franklin buyout. But the NIL concerns, which is like, should we move on to the next guy? We're paying this guy. But if this guy isn't it, there's an opportunity cost to keeping him here. And a loss is maybe worth $150,000, versus a win. And so now you have all these things that are going on. My company Cllct is now helping teams, realize when there's a game used jersey that should come off, or where they should put balls and whatever. There's so much business around us, but it also affects, again, psychology, right? You're paying a guy maybe $100,000, he's no good, and you're paying another guy $10,000 and he's better. At what point do you make a switch? And that's a real thing that's happening at schools all over and will continue to be, right? Like Arch Manning,
Mhm.
right? I mean, okay, so you have millions of dollars, but how much is a loss to Florida?
Mhm.
How much is that?
Yeah.
And so now it is really seeping into everything.
I think that's fair.
Good.
You mentioned collectibles, and I see your are what's behind you some of your favorites? Is that why?
No, I have I'll show you one that no one's seen yet,
Okay.
because I just got it today.
Okay.
So I'll give you a.
Okay.
Do you want me to give you a show and tell? Because I'm
I
staring
will
at it.
gladly. Yes.
So do you know? I don't. Do you know the November 29th, 1963 Life magazine story?
No. But if I see the
Okay.
cover of it, I might.
So this has to be the president.
I'm not going to show you the cover yet because I'm going to tell you the story.
Okay.
So it's November 20th, 1963,
yes.
and they will and Life magazine, which is basically the eyes of the nation, right? Even though there's television at the time, if you want to see what happened in the past week, you're going to go to Life magazine. There were 7 million copies that were published each week. And Life magazine went to press for the November 29th issue on November 20th, 1963. The cover was Roger Staubach, the Navy quarterback, and it was printing and printing and printing. They printed 300,000 copies, and then Kennedy gets killed on November 22nd. So it was running for 40 hours, and they think to themselves, they're like, holy hell, we cannot have Roger Staubach on the cover. We have to do almost full Kennedy. And so one of the Life editors goes down, and he goes down to Dallas and pays Abraham Zapruder $150,000 for his video, which they will initially turn into slides. And so they do that, and then they say, okay, well, we already printed 300,000 of these Roger Staubach issues. We can save the ads. We're going to take out the Staubach story. We'll take out we'll have 37 pages of Kennedy, but we'll take out all the Staubach stuff. So none of the Staubach issue is saved because they're literally pulling all of them apart. So November 29th, 1963, everyone gets the issues. Anything that was on newsstand was sold out. And a couple years later, someone comes into the Life magazine office, and there's a small stack of the Staubachs. And that's pretty much the only Staubachs that have existed. There's about 15 that exist in its full form. And I recently bought one. And it's pretty much the most bumped cover ever. And so here it's Life magazine, it's Staubach, and it has a tremendous inscription: Roger Staubach, the lost cover, R.I.P. JFK. So
That's
this is the
wild.
most, bumped cover of all time. Army, watch out, here comes the Houdini of the backfield. And just goes with my JFK collection. I have his last meal, which was the Fort Worth breakfast. There's only two of those. I have passed to meet him on the tarmac in Dallas. There's only three of those. Um, I have the dinner that didn't happen, a ticket of the dinner that didn't happen. So it just becomes part of, my Kennedy collection. I have every NFL game, all the games that Rovell decided to play the games. I have every ticket and every program from those games. So that's kind of one of the cool things about a collection. You just try to build and build and build. And uh, having a collection and building these collections over the past 20 years has been just a tremendous joy in my life. Not to mention, you know, profitable.
I guess.
It's good on both counts.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I guess with that, why have we seen this resurgence of collectibles? We had somebody that owns a local card shop on, and they've seen a resurgence in this. But why have we seen this pretty much post-pandemic resurgence in
There's
physical-ish
two
media?
reasons. Yeah, there's two reasons. In post-pandemic, a lot of us were alone, and the only thing that made us happy was nostalgia. Nostalgia is, looking back at yesteryear and things that make you happy. And there's very little thing when you're lonely, when you're, in solitary confinement as we were, to have something that you can reach back and can make you happy. And that's what it did. Now, what's crazy is after there was the COVID boom, there was the decline, and then people said, "Oh, it was just the COVID boom," and now it's bigger than the COVID boom. And that part, I would say, is degenerate nation.
Okay,
It's all about
that's fair.
gambling in any form. So one of my 11-year-old sons, he opens a pack. If he doesn't see that it doesn't have a one of one or a one of 49 or a one of 99, he throws it in the garbage immediately. And, that clearly was not, base cards are garbage, and you now have these digital packs where people are opening digital packs that are real, and then you can trade it in for 90% of its value. And people are like, "Oh, listen, I only lost 10% of my value." Like, that's a horrible deal within a couple minutes. But if you're comparing it to gambling where you lose it all, it's actually great. So degenerate nation, I think in some way, gambling on cards and making, big bets. I don't do the card game. I don't like the land of comps where yesterday it sold on eBay for this and it's this today. I really do like the one of one and to, knock people's socks off with the crazy, stories, because stories have value to me. But it is dangerous. You have a situation where you have an 1899 silver certificate that's worth about $250 on eBay. But what happens if I told you that I have an 1899 silver certificate that was in the pocket of a guy who died in the Titanic? Now what is it worth?
Yeah,
If it was in the water for 5 days. So, and then it's up to me, and this is what's so exciting. It's then up to me to figure out how much I'm going to pay for it.
makes sense.
Very cool. I think it's my fault that the football team has lost the past two games, because when I was trading text with Darren to get him here, I'm like, hey, one of the things maybe is what should people collect during a team's good season, right? And then promptly two losses for Penn State. So I'll take the heat for that. And I know it's a personal thing, and I know mediums have changed. I'm not even sure there are game programs inside Beaver Stadium, Darren. I'm not 100% sure.
There are, but not many of them.
But so Darren, what kind of things should people be looking for that may hold value, or is it the story that may work for them, or it's just so highly personal there's not something
Well,
they
I
should look
I I
for?
hope I hope that, the schools are gonna provide this. So one of the things that we're doing is we're standing up kind of like a white label to help teams, leagues, and brands, figure out collectibles. So we're working with one school right now, and we're saying, "Okay, first you have to do a standard operating procedure. How do the ball goes off the backboard in the round of 32, and Derek Queen hits that shot for Maryland, and then the ball is bouncing and they're all celebrating. And the guy from Colorado State just takes it through to the locker room because it's his last game. Hey, man, I want the ball. And I'm screaming, yelling, that's $100,000 ball to a Maryland alum. So one thing is, try to get the schools to understand what has value. And then how do you present it back to the fans that they know it's valuable? So in other words, let's say Penn State's kicking Northwestern's ass, and there's a running back who ran for 5 touchdowns, and he breaks, Curtis Enos's single game record or whatever that. I'm just throwing that out there. And then as he scores his 5th touchdown, they say, "Hey, Beaver Stadium, Penn State fans, this guy's jersey is going to be available. We are going to start the auction now inside the band, and it will close, at the beginning of the next game." So to be able and to be able to sell it to the fans, back to the fans through Penn State, it's going to make it easier to collect if we have our way. Because the previous model was someone gave Penn State money and they put it on their platform. Our idea is no, give it to Penn State to put it on their platform because that's where all the database of people are. So it's going to be easier to figure out what a game-winning, a great season and how to collect it is going to be, because I think there's going to be more items that the school presents to fans.
Gotcha. Well, you're optimistic that Penn State could do something that quickly. I'll tell you that, but that's another episode for us. But still.
Last one for me, Darren, and then I have last one ish, but I have a follow-up one.
Never say last one.
I know, that's fair.
Never
That's fair. That's
fair.
fair. What has the reception been like, and what are the biggest barriers for the people that you are trying to reach with that mission?
They want to take the money. They want to take the bag.
Okay.
Right. And so I noticed that when alums are running an athletic department, they're willing to give the business to us right away, because they understand that the money will be bigger in year 2 and 3 than the bag.
Mm-hmm.
But some people are just charged with taking the bag, right? And they've never really seen it before, and so they don't think about the long term. But I would say anyone who understands the long-term proposition of essentially owning your own stuff, Penn State authentics, right? Instead of a sticker from someone else, and being able to sell it in your own. And the other great thing is, like, hey, LeVar Arrington tries to sell something himself. He can't possibly do as well if he goes through Penn State authentics. And so bringing things back to either sell, to preserve, or monetize, right? I don't think schools should buy some stuff back. I always say at least the pro sports team should buy, for every $1 billion they're worth, they should buy $5 million a year worth of stuff and own stuff. So I don't know, Steve, you would have a sense, does Penn State have a lot of great memorabilia stored away?
I don't know if they have it stored there. The Hall of Fame, they found a lot of stuff that they dug out. I think that they've tried their own auctions and kind of things. I don't know if it's theirs or who the second partner is in terms of doing that stuff. I think some stuff has walked, right? I think player A or B has taken their stuff with them when they were done. What you're talking about feels like it's a possibility for lots of programs.
Yeah, the school essentially owns it, and if they sell it with the player's name, there's a deal to be cut. But I can tell you that if you don't cut the deal before a great game or a great moment, it's not the time to do it in the locker room. And that we're kind of encouraging that, to really put everything above board now and figure it out for everyone's sake, right? Like, you can say, oh, well, we won't cut the player and we'll take his name off the back, but the fan doesn't want his name off the back.
No, they want to know it's his jersey, even in our place.
Exactly. They want his jersey untouched. Part of the fun of the business has been just to show schools that are that are skeptical, to actually show them how we can make money. And one of my favorite stories is in St. John's, when they were on the cusp of winning the big regular season Big East title. We went to the St. John's Seton Hall game, and I said to Madison Square Garden, I said, "What can we take off the floor?" And they said, "Well, it's a carpenters union, so you can't touch anything. They'll scrape it and they'll put it in the garbage, and then you could take it out of the garbage." I'm like, yeah, well, when you think of garbage, think Darren. I'm going to go stand by that garbage. And so what we did is we created an awesome card where you get a piece of the St. John's decal, a piece of the 3-point line, a piece of the Big East logo, a piece of the bench towel, a piece of the confetti, and a piece of the Gatorade logo on this card. There's only 100 of them, and we made $50,000 for St. John's out of garbage in 24 hours. So that's kind of the stuff that, we could do. All that stuff was free. And we were able to just take that kind of stuff, and no one's thinking about it the way we are. So it's fun.
No, and I think that's the power in outsourcing it or partnering with somebody like you, because it's not somebody's job to think about it at the
And it will
school.
never be someone's job. No one's ever going to be the Penn State collectible head. I can't tell you how important it is for standard operating procedures to be in place. We spoke to another school. They had a practice field that was there for 20 years. All the head of facilities was told is that they're just gotta, take it off. There was no one to intercept that. There was no one to call and say, "Hey, before you do anything," and we think it was $1 million field. We went to Wimbledon and said, "What are you doing with the championship grass court?" "Oh, we're just, mowing it over again." "We think we can make mini championship courts." "We think you're leaving $6 to $8 million on the table." And so you have to think about it. We're working on tech right now that will enable alarms to go off when something happens during a game to know it's collectible. So there's a lot of things to do, and there's a lot of work to be done. And this certainly, the NIL era is not time to leave any money on the table.
The truth, well, it's not happening here, and I'm certain they will be happy to monetize it
Yeah.
some other way, is what we've learned here. So cool. Thank you.
Yeah. It's a real trash to treasure story, I think.
Yes,
what
yes.
we're getting at here. All right, last one. I promise this is the last one, and then I'll let you plug things. So again, you're right. I shouldn't have said last one, but here we are.
Mm.
Where in Chicago should I get my deep dish pizza next time out that way?
All right, now this is a whole controversy. It's always been a controversy, but now there's like a new controversy. Chicago tavern style pizza.
Okay.
Now, okay, I lived there for 4 years, okay, from 96 to 2000. I never heard about this tavern style pizza. All I heard was deep dish. I went to Gino's, Giordano's, Lou Malnati's. Like, I went to all of them, even Pizzeria Uno, Due, whatever. I never heard of the hottest pizza now, maybe in the country, is Chicago tavern style pizza, which is basically New York thin crust cut in squares. So I'm gonna say the deep dish. I like Gino's. I like Giordano's. Giordano's is interesting because you have the layer of dough, sauce, and dough. But I think you should research this tavern style pizza. Supposedly it's good. You could only eat 1 or 2 pieces of deep dish. After a while, it's disgusting. But the tavern style, as a New Yorker, I think it looks good. I haven't been able to get to any one of these, but research them. There's like 2 or 3 that are supposedly great, and you like have to eat it at 11 o'clock a.m. because you can't get in at any other time. It's going crazy. But I ask anyone who I went to school in Chicago, I'm like, have you ever heard of this tavern thing? Because this is not, and 1 or 2 people said, "Oh yeah, it was." And I'm like, no, I'm a foodie. I never heard this before. I think this is fake. This just emerged, but check that out.
Okay. Appreciate that. Your moment to plug Cllct. Anything else that you're working on?
Yeah, just go to Cllct.com if you want. I talked about the consultancy side, but if you want to, learn about the business of collectibles and everything that's going on, we're there. What else am I gonna? I'm an investor in Athletic Brewing, so non-alcoholic beer. Is great. Pop-up Bagel, which has not made it to State College yet, but I'm sure it will. And yeah, that's about it. It's just I would encourage people to get into something collectible, even if they're not collectors. It's a really great thing to have, and so you should try to be disciplined. I always tell it's hard to tell my kids what to do because I think there's so much garbage out there right now, right? Like, I don't think a Patrick Mahomes rookie patch with, that's signed, by Patrick Mahomes should be worth $35,000. I mean, come on. But just make sure you buy things that have a story, that relates to you, or a story that just is great to tell. I love that.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Darren.
Thanks,
You got
Darren, very
it.
much.
Steve, I feel like we got a history lesson. I feel like we got a business lesson. I feel like we got life lessons in that interview. Talk about somebody that has charted their own path and stuck to it. And I think that is came through and comes through. And I think even now, as he goes to do this, the Cllct thing, it's like, I mean, the ingenuity to go and be like, I'll just stand by the trash, like, and do something like that. I just think is very smart, very cool, and really appreciated his storytelling there.
Yeah, Darren's authentic. He's creative. I mean, yeah, and he talked too about as he created his brand, more or less the people that were. We didn't go deep into it, but yeah, have you pissed somebody off? Yeah, like there are people who took shots and still take shots once he got there, but he's at a level that he's earned, earned that thing for people to do. No, appreciate him making time, and I think there's a lot there in terms of going on your own, looking for opportunities, trying things, and it comes back to strong storytelling. We talked about what you collect. Does it have a story with it? So I appreciate, and he changed how people consume sports. He certainly played a big role in how people consume sports. Talked about sports teams being a public trust because now they know what the money's going on. So yeah,
and I think I don't think he gets enough credit for that now, but he did. Like, I feel like we were kind of at his second stint of ESPN really well aware of what he was doing in terms of shifting the landscape, so to speak. And I thought it was neat to hear the behind the scenes of how he even was like, this is something I want to do. No, and I really like the fact that everything he doesn't. The Patrick Mahomes patch was a good example. I think Penn State even itself has like thrown things at us, and it's like this price, and it's like, well, is it really worth that? But if it has a story to you, I've got stuff over here that has a story to me, and I know you've got everything behind you has a story with you. Like I think that to me, I think that's just that's how I go about buying collectibles. I mean, I don't think that Rose Bowl ticket, or I don't think that Sugar Bowl program is probably worth more than, $50, but it's really cool to have. Like, it's worth, to me, way more than that. And I think that was important.
I think that was a great part that he conveyed. And I talked about the box when he came to Penn State 15 years ago now. I think the last time I saw him was the Steelers Super Bowl in Florida. But we had traded a lot of stuff and been in contact before that because the visit was before that. His advice to students was, hey, you're trying to get someone's attention, you're trying to get a job, you're trying to do whatever, send a box. Nothing bad comes in a box. Like, and the mail comes to their desk and plops down, and yours is the box. They're going to notice it, right? Which is, I've used a couple of different times for things that have worked. So I thought that was cool, practical advice, along with the bet on yourself and basically just look at where other people aren't looking to make something happen.
Cool. All right. Well, that's the second episode this week. No old guy young guy. You can listen to that in the first episode of the week. Yeah, we already filled you in on what's coming on the block. So yeah. Name of this podcast, Stuff Summer Says with Steve. It's got a website called stuffsummersays.com. On that website, there's a section called With Steve. Then we have what else do we have? We have emails. Mine's Darian at stuffsummersays.com. Steve's is
Steve at stuffsummersays.com.
Perfect. I was just thinking about how you didn't know how to check that email for a little bit of a period of time, and now you do, and I'm really proud of you for that.
I'm growing every day.
I know you are.
Got to improve. Got to own it and get better.
I embrace that. And then lastly, 5 stars, thumbs up. Actually, lastly, you can find me on the internet at Stuff Summer Says. You can find Steve
at Steve Samsel.
See ya. Bye.